Hey everyone, George here. Welcome back to the channel. We are living in some very unusual times right now, and what I wanted to talk about today is not a whole bunch about that. I do want to touch on that a little bit here at first. We'll get that out of the way. Then we're going to talk about some things that I think are important regarding our fish tanks here that we may not have thought of. So I'm sure there's other videos that are going to be put out from other people that have YouTube channels that are going to give you some basic ideas about the care of your fish. But let's address, first of all, a couple of the things that I think are important regarding our own personal hygiene. Number one, my wife is in the medical business. I am not. But I know from what she has been taught and told that some of the most basic things that we can do is limit, number one, our socialization. Now, I live in the Seattle area. We are limited. First, we were 500 people, and then we were down to 200 people that we could socialize with, and then we were down to 100, and then we went down to 50. Now the recommendation is 10 people. So we're basically getting to the point where the government is sort of dictating to us how we should, and probably all with good intentions, we should behave and whatever. Now, some of the things that I think are more important than anything, and we're going to make this very short, like I said, and get into talking about these fish tanks and some of the things that I think are important about these that we might not have thought of. Wash your hands. Wash your hands whenever you go anywhere, and limit the amount of times that you go out and go to a grocery store, a pharmacy, or whatever place happens to be open. We don't have any restaurants open. We have no sports facilities open. We have no bars open. We have takeout food mostly through Grubhub or some of those places. But for the most part, we're pretty much locked down. Most people are working out of their homes now. I have always worked out of my home, so this is not a big change for me. My kids are older, so I don't have little ones at home, but there are people who are having dramatic changes in their lives. They've never worked at home before, and this is very strange for them. Their kids are now home. They don't have daycare. They don't have some of the basic things that have really been part of their lives forever, have just up within the last 2 weeks are now gone. So pay attention to what the public officials are saying about limiting the amount of exposure that you have. I think that is so important. Don't go out and do risky behavior. Don't go to the store unless you absolutely have to. Which brings me into one of the things that I want to talk about today. I had a list of 10 things about our fish tanks here that I wanted to talk about, and I said, you know, that's an awful long list. I think I can incorporate this conversation and get all of the 10 things that I had concerns about into 5 basic categories, and I'm going to touch on those just a little bit, and then I'm going to move on and go from there. But the first thing I want you to understand about your fish tanks is, do you have enough supplies to last you for a couple of months? This includes food, this includes water treatments, this includes fertilizers if you have heavily planted tanks. If you have saltwater aquariums, do you have enough salt? Is there any maintenance on your aquarium that you have been meaning to do and it's knocking on death's door and you haven't done it? This is the time to go out and get that stuff and get it home. You're going to be home anyway. Take the time to get some of that stuff done. Now, as I was saying, supplies, fish food, conditioners, any kind of filtration devices such as filter cartridges that you might need, or anything like that that you may not have enough of that stuff on hand to last you a couple of months. It's the same as if you were thinking about your family. Think about your tanks as if they were part of your family and what you're going to need to do to make sure that these fish tanks are in good condition when we get on the other side of this whole worldwide problem that we're having. Now the second thing is do some maintenance on your tank that you've been avoiding probably for a long time. There's a lot of times I tell myself, oh man, the plants need to be clipped, or I need to get in there and do a real serious vacuuming of the gravel or substrate. There's just all kinds of things that we can think of that we avoid doing simply because we're busy with our lives. And we are. We're just very busy people most of the time. Now that you have an opportunity to be home and you are able to spend more time around your aquariums, I hope that you'll take advantage of that time to make sure the maintenance on your aquariums is brought right up to absolute perfection. Absolute perfection. I don't know how many water changes each one of you do. I don't care. Everyone is on a different schedule with water changes. There's 100 different ideas on how many water changes need to be done. I will tell you personally what I think you should do. If you have well-established tanks, maintain the water changes that you have always done on those tanks. There's no reason to do anything different. That's the third thing. I think that if you are not doing as many water changes, it also goes the other direction. If you are not doing as many water changes as you should, and your tank is suffering, because you can see it in your tank, if it's suffering from not doing those water changes, here's an opportunity to get yourself back in the habit of taking that 10-15 minutes per tank a day, if you have more than one tank, or if you just have one, to actually do those water changes a couple of times a week. And that is a quarter. I'm talking about established tanks. I'm not talking about tanks that have just cycled or anything like that. I'll get into that in a minute here. But if you have well-established tanks, twice a week do a quarter water change on every tank that you have in your house. If that's one tank or 25 tanks, make sure that you are doing those water changes, and make sure you have enough water conditioners on hand to make sure that you are giving those fish good quality water. Now, the fourth thing that I want to talk about is medications. Do you have medications on hand in case you have a problem that you didn't even think about? You don't think you're going to have a problem, and the time that you don't think that you're going to have a problem is the time that you probably will. If you don't have some basics on hand, like an antibacterial, antimicrobials, an antifungus, things such as ick, which are very basic things that can happen to fish, I would recommend getting something that covers a lot of these things, like ICX is number one. Seachem has some great products out there. Look at some of that stuff, but make sure whatever your favorite medication is to use for your fish in case they get sick or unhealthy in some way, or maybe you don't know what's wrong with them and you want to use something that's broad spectrum. Make sure you have things on hand that you may not be able to get, and you're going to kick yourself because the time that you say it isn't going to happen, like I said just a few minutes ago, is probably the time that it could. So make sure that you do have some things on hand. Now, the fourth thing, your children are going to be home. They're going to be spending a lot more time at home with you, and they're going to be bored to death. This is an absolute opportunity to introduce these kids to your fish tanks, even though these tanks may have been in your house for years. Your kids may walk in and they just are totally oblivious to these tanks because they've always been there. Give them an education about fish. Use this as an opportunity to educate your children about fish and the wonderful world of this hobby that so many of us belong to. And give yourself an opportunity to talk to your children about the fish. They may have a ton of questions and felt like maybe they were bugging you if they asked. This is a time to let them know that if they want to get educated about the fish tanks in your home, they're going to get bored. They are going to get bored. Kids between the ages of 7 and 14 are going to be bored out of their minds over the next weeks or maybe months if it takes that long. And this is an opportunity to take and use the fish tank as a teaching tool or an educational tool to talk about so many things. You don't even have to just talk about your fish. You can talk about water testing, the chemistries, the things that happen in your water that go on that they may never even have thought about. And this is a good time to incorporate the science of these fish tanks into the lives of your children. So that's number 4. And then the 5th thing that I want you to think about: how have you become oblivious to your own personal tanks in your home? How have you distanced yourself from the hobby that you once loved? This is an opportunity for you to rebond with your fish tanks and to do some things with them that you haven't done in a long time. Maybe you want to take the whole thing apart on a cycle tank and rescape it. Maybe you've got scaping materials on hand. This is the time to do it. Maybe this is the time to enhance your tank and make it more beautiful than it's ever been. I mean, there's all kinds of opportunities here. And I think these 5 things that I just talked about are the most important. Fall back in love with your hobby. Fall back in love with the fish tanks that you have in your home, knowing that this hobby is so much fun and can be so beautiful if you just reacquaint yourself with it. Now, many of you are going to do most of this stuff without me saying a word to you. This really is applying to those people who really haven't thought much about the aquariums that they have in their home and the maintenance that they may need, the supplies that they may need, and the time that they could now spend because you have extra time because you're working at home. Now, a lot of people, I don't know what your situation is. There's all kinds of different things going on all over the world that are different. Here in Seattle, we have no bars open, we have no restaurants open, we have no sporting facilities, we have no places where you can gather with people and socialize, and we shouldn't be doing those things because we know now that the government is suggesting that we hang out with no more than 10 people. I don't even do that. To be honest with you, I'm going to use this time to reacquaint myself with my family and to spend time with my family, especially my children, even though they're older, and to talk about their behaviors and some of the things that they may be doing still that are risky, that you as an adult can sort of prepare them for and ask them not to do those things and explain why. If you're dealing with elderly people in your home, your children's behavior become even that much more important, because whatever your children are doing, they're bringing into your home. If you haven't thought about that, think about restricting your children to only playing with other kids where you know that their families are practicing good behaviors as well, and that you know them well enough to feel secure in the sense that you're doing the best that you possibly can to minimize the opportunity for this virus to explode in your house. Now, I am not a person who is overly dramatic about these things. I am not a person that's overly concerned about these things, because I think if we wash our hands really good, we use hand sanitizers, if we minimize how many times we go out a day, or, don't go out at all if you don't have to. Just spend time at home with your family. For those of you who have to go out, for those of you who still have to work, maybe like my wife does, in a medical facility, this is the time to think about those people coming back into the home and have a plan as a family for those who are still working outside of the home on how we're going to prevent those people from bringing a virus into our home that is unwanted and unnecessary. Getting back to the basics of this, I hope all of you are doing well, and I am praying that every one of my followers here, or subscribers, or people who may have just come across this channel for the very first time, are taking very good care of yourself. This doesn't mean anywhere near as much as other human beings in our lives, but it is also an important component of things that we need to think about when we're supplying our homes with the basic needs that we have. These fish have basic needs as well, and that's why I made this video. I hope you'll take time, watch the video from the moment it starts to the moment it ends, because there's very good information here, not only about your personal well-being, but the well-being of these creatures that we brought into our home, these fish that we love so much and we find so much relaxation and beauty in. It is a beautiful hobby, and these fish are incredible creatures to watch. They're so different from species to species, whether it be saltwater or freshwater or whatever. Take the time to watch the video from front to back. I hope that you will do that. I wish all of you well. I wish you good health, and I wish you love. And I hope that you will take to heart what I've said here, and you'll apply it into your lives, and you'll run out as soon as you can before things get even crazier out there, and get the things that you need for your fish tanks so that you don't get caught off guard. The medications, like I said, very important. Food, and any other supplies that you might need over the next 2 weeks to even 2 months. We have no idea how long this is going to go on for, and how much we could run out of things that we might need, which would be an absolute disaster for any of us. So get out there today if you still can, and go to places where you can pick up some supplies. I'm not being paid by anybody to tell you this stuff. I haven't mentioned names other than a couple of medications just because I have used them, and from personal experience, I think it's important that you have medications on hand just in case you need them. But I'm not bringing up any other kinds of products by name, because I'm not trying to push products. I want you to go out and buy whatever you normally buy, and make sure you have enough of it. Anyways, again, I wish you good health, I wish you love, I wish you peace, and I am praying for all of you. I hope you'll join me again soon on my next video. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and leave your comments. Right now, the comments are going to be more and more important for all of us as we are bored and we're sitting home and we're trying to find things to do. I am so interested in knowing what's going on in your world, what's going on with your fish tank, and if you have questions that I can answer that can be beneficial to you and help you, I'm glad to do it. Anyways, this is George with The Art of Water. We'll talk again soon.